Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, born October 7, 1952, is a Russian politician and former intelligence officer who is the president of Russia. Putin has held continuous positions as president or prime minister since 1999, as prime minister from 1999 to 2000 and from 2008 to 2012, and as president from 2000 to 2008 and since 2012. He is the longest-serving Russian or Soviet leader since Joseph Stalin. Putin worked as a KGB foreign intelligence officer for 16 years, rising to the rank of lieutenant colonel before resigning in 1991 to begin a political career in St. Petersburg. In 1996, he moved to Moscow to join the administration of President Boris Yeltsin. He briefly served as the director of the Federal Security Service, FSB, and then as secretary of the Security Council of Russia before being appointed prime minister in August 1999. Following Yeltsin's resignation, Putin became acting president and, in less than 4 months, was elected to his first term as president. He was re-elected in 2004. Due to constitutional limitations of 2 consecutive presidential terms, Putin served as prime minister again from 2008 to 2012 under Dmitry Medvedev. He returned to the presidency in 2012, following an election marked by allegations of fraud and protests, and was re-elected in 2018. During Putin's initial presidential tenure, the Russian economy grew on average by 7% per year, driven by economic reforms and a 5-fold increase in the price of oil and gas. Additionally, Putin led Russia in a conflict against Chechen separatists, re-establishing federal control over the region. While serving as prime minister under Medvedev, he oversaw a military conflict with Georgia and enacted military and police reforms. In his third presidential term, Russia annexed Crimea and supported a war in eastern Ukraine through several military incursions, resulting in international sanctions and a financial crisis in Russia. He also ordered a military intervention in Syria to support his ally Bashar al-Assad during the Syrian civil war, ultimately securing permanent naval bases in the eastern Mediterranean. In February 2022, during his 4th presidential term, Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which prompted international condemnation and led to expanded sanctions. In September 2022, he announced a partial mobilization and forcibly annexed 4 Ukrainian oblasts into Russia. In March 2023, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Putin for war crimes related to his alleged criminal responsibility for illegal child abductions during the war. In April 2021, after a referendum, he signed into law constitutional amendments that included one allowing him to run for re-election twice more, potentially extending his presidency to 2036. In June 2023, he survived the Wagner Group rebellion. In March 2024, he was re-elected for another term. Under Putin's rule, the Russian political system has been transformed into an authoritarian dictatorship. His rule has been marked by endemic corruption and widespread human rights violations, including the imprisonment and suppression of political opponents, intimidation and censorship of independent media in Russia, and a lack of free and fair elections. Putin's Russia has consistently received low scores on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index, the Economist Democracy Index, Freedom House's Freedom in the World Index, and the Reporters Without Borders Press Freedom Index. Early life. Putin was born on October 7, 1952 in Leningrad, Soviet Union, now St. Petersburg, Russia, the youngest of 3 children of Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin, 1911 to 1999, and Maria Ivanovna Putina, née Shelemova, 1911 to 1998. His grandfather, Spiridon Putin, 1879 to 1965, was a personal cook to Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin. Putin's birth was preceded by the deaths of 2 brothers. Albert, born in the 1930s, died in infancy, and Victor, born in 1940, died of diphtheria and starvation in 1942 during the siege of Leningrad by Nazi Germany's forces in World War II. Putin's mother was a factory worker, and his father was a conscript in the Soviet Navy, serving in the submarine fleet in the early 1930s. During the early stage of the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union, his father served in the Destruction Battalion of the NKVD. Later, he was transferred to the regular army and was severely wounded in 1942. Putin's maternal grandmother was killed by the German occupiers of Tver region in 1941, and his maternal uncles disappeared on the Eastern Front during World War II. Education. On September 1, 1960, Putin started at school number 193 at Baskov Lane, near his home. He was one of a few in his class of about 45 pupils who were not yet members of the Young Pioneer organization. At the age of 12, he began to practice Sambo and Judo. In his free time, he enjoyed reading the works of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and Lenin. Putin attended St. Petersburg High School 281 with a German language immersion program. He is fluent in German and often gives speeches and interviews in that language. Putin learned English as an adult, and he is not as fluent in English as he is in German. Putin studied law at the Leningrad State University named after Andrei Zhdanov, now St. Petersburg State University, in 1970 and graduated in 1975. His thesis was on the most favored nation trading principle in international law. While there, he was required to join the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, CPSU. He remained a member until it ceased to exist in 1991. Putin met Anatoly Sobchak, an assistant professor who taught business law, and who later became the co-author of the Russian Constitution. Putin was influential in Sobchak's career in St. Petersburg, and Sobchak was influential in Putin's career in Moscow. In 1997, Putin received a degree in economics at the St. Petersburg Mining University for a thesis on energy dependencies and their instrumentalization in foreign policy. His supervisor was Vladimir Litvinenko, who in 2000 and again in 2004 managed his presidential election campaigns in St. Petersburg. Igor Danchenko and Clifford Gaddy consider Putin to be a plagiarist according to Western standards. One book from which he copied entire paragraphs is the Russian-language edition of King and Cleland's Strategic Planning and Policy, 1978. Balzer wrote on the Putin thesis and Russian energy policy and concludes along with Alcott that the primacy of the Russian state in the country's energy sector is non-negotiable, and cites the insistence on majority Russian ownership of any joint venture, particularly since BASF signed the Gazprom Nord Stream Yuzhno-Russkoye deal in 2004 with a 49-51 structure, as opposed to the older 50-50 split of British Petroleum's TNK-BP project,